It's okay. We'll get going and we'll call this finance meeting to order for March 24th. It starts at 6:30, obviously, and everyone's present. We have two of us here. And the third person, Janelle, she is by phone. For those who are watching or unsure, we have the administrator to my left, and there's the finance director is up on the screen. So with that said, we'll call to order approval of minutes. These were from March 10th of this year. Any changes or anything? Dan, man? I think if
I'm
not,
comfortable.
We need a motion.
I need a motion.
Motion to approve?
Yeah. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, carried. Next is public appearance. There's no one here for that tonight. So we'll just go right ahead into the finance director's report. The first part I see listed here is the treasurer's report as of January 31st of this year. Misty or Pat? Or?
Misty will take it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'd like to take a couple more minutes of your guys' time than what I usually would do during a finance director report. In your packet tonight, there's two treasurer's reports, one for January and one for February. What you'll notice is that the market is dropping. The city is not isolated from that realisticness that we're all experiencing right now. So we had two more of our securities called. What that means is that the higher interest rate that we were earning on them, when I'm reinvesting it now, it's at quite a bit lower interest rate. But we subscribe to the ladder approach. So as long as we invest in a ladder so that we know that we're hitting certain quarterly marks, we just take the market as it comes. So it's a way to be kind of slow and steady. But I'll say the reinvestment rates are quite a bit lower than what we've seen in the past. The other thing that's in your packet is the arbitrage reporting. So the 2015 debt, it's been 5 years since we issued debt. And so we're required to look back to make sure that we met all of the IRS requirements as far as spend down and how much money we earned on those proceeds before we spent it, etc. So we hire Ellers to do that analysis for us. You'll see that report in your packet, but there was no ramifications as a result of that. So we met all of our requirements for that issuance. So that's that. Also wanted to talk to you a little bit about how the finance department is responding to this COVID-19 situation. So payroll, accounts payable, and then cash receipting is considered our essential functions, along with debt payments and tax settlement payments, things like that. So myself, I'm working from home, and two of my other staff that are payroll and AP are working from home. And then the other three staff are alternating days, so that we have one, at most two people in the office at a time, and then the rest of their time they're spending working from home. I am a little concerned about the financial impact of what this is going to be. We'll talk about that a little bit more with some of the resolutions that are coming through. For the most part, our biggest revenue sources are pretty stable. Property taxes are already collected, or we know that we will be getting those. But there's some other things that will maybe not come to fruition as we thought it would be. Interest revenue is a big one. Right now, building permits are continuing, but we don't know what's going to happen in the future. Senior center programming, rec programming, shelter rentals, all of that stuff is on hold at this point, so that revenue is not something we can count on. And then some things will have just the timing issue. So court fees, for example, court is shut down at this point, so we won't be collecting those payments. And then utilities, which again, we'll talk about in a little bit. I suspect that we'll have a little bit of a delay in our collections on utilities too. So overall, I don't think we need to panic by any means. We do have ample reserves to get us through this, but I think it would be wise for us to make sure we're making reasonable, responsible financial choices. So I've asked department heads that if there is some discretionary spending, to delay some of those things until we see how long this lasts and how much of a financial impact that we have. But for the most part, we're kind of continue as business as usual.
I had the opportunity to have a short conversation with the mayor earlier today around that. And I am grateful for city staff for finding a way to continue to work with the contractors and the engineering firms. Clearly, we've got our directives from the governor, but those governors support those key projects to continue to roll forward. The fact that the city has taken a philosophy of staying open for those kinds of things and supporting businesses, I think is going to not only mean the world to those organizations, I think it's going to help the city long term as well.
Agreed.
Just from what the country's going through, we probably call it something misty. We probably call it something different. I call it a rainy day fund, or a fund that is out there for emergencies. I get that. But I have some concerns. You hit on a little of it, but I have some concerns just because obviously from the finance, it wouldn't be right if I didn't tell you my thought. It has to do with hotel tax might be down.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's another one.
We might have purchasing that we are going to do and we decide not to. That's just a thought. I mean, it's maybe for another day, but we don't do it. This one is for another day, but hiring, just a thought. Okay, I'll just throw that out there because that can be a whole discussion. Correct me if I'm wrong, state aid is down.
No.
Isn't state aid down a little bit? Wasn't it down like 5%, or it was down this year? It wasn't what I thought.
So it was down. We did have a pretty significant drop in our state aid, but we reflected that in our 2020 budget. So we knew that those amounts were going to be less.
Okay. You hit on it already a little bit. It had to do with city investments are down a little bit. I heard you. You did say that. I guess we don't know what next couple of months will bring, but at the same time, those of us, Dan, if this goes the way it's going, I don't look for the budget to be very, very nice in this next year. I don't look for it to be good at all. But I think today in March, we're talking about this. It's something you have to do to talk about it because we don't know what's going to come about. Now, you're not hearing me say shut down everything. I didn't say that. But the things I talked about, I think are concerning.
Yeah, and we did talk in our
that
department head meeting this morning about a possible hiring freeze. We know some of the area municipalities are taking that route, but we have at least a couple of pretty key positions that we want to continue on, and HR has been able to work from home to kind of get the schedules and the recruitment and stuff done. But we have had that conversation, and hopefully it doesn't get to that, but we'll keep that in mind.
Yeah. I guess I'm on the wrong committee if I don't bring it up,
Glad you
That's probably what it's about. I mean, that's what this is about. And it's not everything that the governor has to say, meaning the governor doesn't run municipal, a city our size doesn't run it. He runs the whole state. So, I mean, it's just something to think about for the future.
Yeah, the other feedback I've got, for whatever it's worth, is I was on a call with Downtown Madison Incorporated just a couple of days ago, and they had done some polling of approximately 440 businesses, and the findings of that survey were pretty consistent with what you would expect. It's pretty much the canary industries that are going to be at risk, and they typically are going to define those as hotel, restaurants, anything in that space that would be reliant on tourist and tourist-related businesses. So their feedback was to, do your best job, and especially with those smaller mom-and-pop kind of restaurants, and frequently them, swing by, get your meals to go, and do what we can as far as helping them through these challenging times.
So, Misty, there's no doubt in my mind, regardless how fast we come out of this, that there's going to be some pain. And I guess my question for you would be, what do you think in terms of our 2021 budget as we look at that this fall, perhaps? Is the city going to be, I mean, are we going to, I think we were hoping for a reasonable, in terms of our revenues coming in, reasonable things, reasonable revenues to deliver services to our citizens. And also protect the taxpayer, that balance we're always trying to achieve. Do you foresee a major shakeup in our short to medium term thinking in terms of where we might be in terms of the budget situation this fall, depending on how long this whole shutdown of government and restaurants and essentially where many people are self-quarantining and things like that. And so long as that continues, obviously, people are not staying at hotels and the restaurants are closed. Hospitality industry is shut down. In your mind, can you tell us, in your opinion, the short-term and medium into long-term effects this might have on the city's budget picture?
Yeah, so during the last budget process, last couple actually, levy limits has been our biggest constraint. And I know there's been different discussions about things that council would like to see included in the next budget if there was capacity. Our net new construction for next year will probably still be pretty healthy because it's based on what happened in 2019 with values as of 1/1/20. All of this has then happened subsequent to that. So I think our capacity will be higher, but I think the challenge will be balancing, as you said, the needs of the taxpayers and those that are struggling in particular this year with what we are allowed to do. So I suspect that we might not levy up to the maximum that we're allowed to, as long as we have strategies in place to keep that capacity for future years.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
And I think I mentioned this too. I do think one of the things going on out there is people make decisions. I think you want to take a judicious view of things and think long term as opposed to what's happening on the ground today. We want to hold off and make decisions based on long term thinking. We will come out of this hopefully sooner rather than later, but you never know. And that being said, there's no doubt there's going to be some pain. I have no doubt about that. And I'm feeling it. Others are feeling it. I think we're just all feeling it by being cooped up at home all day. It's kind of nice to be able to come out here and at least we got 4 people in the room right now, so that's good. Good to see you guys on TV and Janelle on the phone. But there's going to be some short-term pain. I think as we think about our budget situation, we ought to take the long view, not make any rash decisions, prepare and be very careful about how we proceed, but use the information available to us and not have a knee-jerk reaction to anything is what I would suggest to my fellow alders and staff and others.
Agreed.
Yeah. Anything else?
I'm going to sound opportunistic for a minute. Is there a chance that there is an upside to this? So, for example, are there certain things that we would have normally bid out for work that we might be able to reconsider and perhaps see more favorable pricing?
Well, I could just, I could elaborate on one project that recently came in, the Commerce Road project. We saw about an $80,000 savings under the estimated cost on that project. I think everyone's going to be sharpening their pencil a little bit during these times, and definitely, we have some projects forthcoming, to be bid. Unfortunately, not now. A lot of those projects that we're working on this year already gone through that process, but next year's another year. Hopefully, we're out of this thing by then, though.
The other thing I'd say is from a debt issuance perspective. So we are planning to borrow more money in October and November. If the market does stay depressed or stay lower or with a lower rate, maybe we can get a better rate on the debt that we plan to issue for the other part of Fish Hatchery Road in particular. The other thing I'll mention, just to kind of plant the seed, is last time the country went through a recession, the federal government issued Build America bonds, or allowed us to do Build America bonds, which was a pretty attractive financing method for us. That was able to allow us to do big projects for a somewhat lower cost because of that financing. If something like that comes through again, if there's some projects that we have in the hopper, maybe we'll want to actually accelerate a project, say the public safety facility, because we can get it for, or get the money for it for a much cheaper cost than it would if we waited a year or two. So we'll see how that all kind of shakes out.
I'm done. Thanks, Misty. Were you done with A, B, and C? I think you were, right? With all of them,
Yep,
right?
I'm all done with my report.
Anything else? No? Okay. Thank you. Next I'm in review the bills. These are checks, 10,000 and above. These are dated 3/1/20 through 3/15/20. Total is $770,644,017. Any questions or anything? Not, I'll go on. The next group is the checks issued. The numbers are 120,583 through 120,644. These are dated 3/1/20 of this year through 3/15/20. Total is $839,489.22. I don't think there's any questions. I'll just move on to the next item, action items. The next action item, or the first one we have tonight, is R 2620, declaring the need for Dane County Housing Authority to function within the city of Fitchburg and authorizing the Dane County Housing Authority to operate within the city of Fitchburg. Need a motion.
Motion to approve?
Motion approved. Mr. or Pat?
Yeah, I can speak with this one, and then if Misty wants to add anything, that's fine. As you know, currently, the city of Fitchburg is one of the only, I believe, the only municipality in Dane County that doesn't allow the Dane County Housing Authority to operate in. What this resolution would do is give them the ability to either, well, first of all, to run facilities, whether that's through ownership of housing or investment in apartment buildings or duplexes, so on. It would give them the authority to operate here in the city of Fitchburg. This was a priority in the housing plan that was recently approved by the council last year. It has been approved by the Plan Commission, and it hasn't gone to CETA yet. So it has been through Plan Commission. It'll obviously be through this body this evening, and it'll be considered by the council tonight. So this is sort of the first step in the process.
Do they pay taxes?
They do not pay taxes, but in the resolution, you'll notice one of the last whereas clauses, we would state in there that they would pay a pilot equal to the city's portion of the taxes. So they would end up making the city whole.
I got more of a procedure question. How did this end up on the agenda when it didn't go through CETA?
CETA was canceled due to this COVID virus we're going through.
Gotcha.
And we really don't know when the non-essential committees are going to meet again, if they're going to meet at all in the next couple months. So the mayor wanted to get this process moving. It was a priority of the housing plan, and he thought bringing it through the Plan Commission, Finance Committee, and the council, which has a couple of the CETA members on it, would be at least an opportunity for the council to consider it. That would be up to you guys in the next meeting.
Quick question on the guidelines to this. Do we have I just have the agenda up. I admit it. I didn't go deeper. Do we have guidelines in reference to the county in writing, we expect this, whatever it may be, and are they just act on their own accord and then come to the city? What are our guidelines for this?
Well, they would come to us with each one of the projects that they would bring forth for, that they would control. So each one of those projects would be in front of this body for consideration, because the city will have to analyze and establish pilots for each one of those projects. So each one of those projects would have the opportunity to go through our housing committee, which is, an ad hoc committee, and then CETA is our housing authority. They would actually go through this body, finance, and ultimately through council for each one of their properties.
I know some of these questions we may hear again tonight, but I mean, here's the other question I have about it. Say they bought a house, I'm obviously making all this up. Say they bought a house in Seminole Forest, and they could put, correct me if I'm wrong, they could put Section 8 housing in there, or they could put whatever they want to a degree as far as renting it out, Pat. I'm talking about, renting it out. And let me go out on a limb here a little bit. And I said I'm going out on a limb here a little bit. They could go not only Section 8, but do we have discretion? I don't think we have any power over who they put in the home, do we?
No, all their housing that would be available to the public would be subsidized housing to some extent. So they wouldn't purchase a property and rent it out market rate. They're established for the purpose of providing housing for the people that fall below a certain income level. And those are various income levels established by the state and federal government based on 80, 60, and 40% of the median household income. So, yes, they would be placing those individuals that fall in those 40, 60, 80% categories in those homes.
You got any question, Matt?
So I'll just make this comment. So I had met with, I think it's Rob Dickey. He's the
Yeah,
director?
Rob's actually the executive director of the Housing Authority.
Right, and so I met with him in 2017, and we had a conversation about bringing the Housing Authority to Fitchburg, and the point he made to me was, it's just another tool in the toolbox. We may come forward with the stuff, the council may not like it, or maybe the plan commission, whatever, and you can say no if you don't like it, and I think that's okay. I think that's a great idea, and so I'm supportive of this concept, and like you said, Tom, we can't control, who lives where, within reason, we can't, but you can't do that with private home ownership or anything like that. That's not something we have jurisdiction over. But I think that this is, it's something that I supported back in 2017. It was, I think, killed by the Plan Commission back then. And so that's the way it went. But I've always felt this was just another tool in the toolbox for the city. I'm sure along the lines you'll have stuff that will come forward that a lot of people like and is good, and will move through the process. And there may be other items that council members, plan commission members don't like and won't make it through the process. And that's the essence of democracy. It's the tool in the toolbox that we look for. I think this body and I think this city and I think residents, as we're looking at options, should have options. Looking for options, we should have options, as many as possible. It doesn't mean you have an option's an option. There's a lot of ideas. Not all of them are good. You take the good ideas and try to eliminate the bad. But I think that they have potential to bring good concepts, ideas, projects, things like that. And we, as intelligent people, we can all go through those and decide what's best for the community and what's not. So that's what I'd like to see happen. And anytime we have an opportunity to bring options and ideas and concepts forward and have a debate on those and a conversation within the marketplace of ideas, I think it's a good thing.
I got a question for you though, Dan. You're on different territory here though. The city of Fitchburg has never done this. Maybe your Sun Prairie's done it, maybe Middleton's done it. I get that. I understand that. I know you are too. You would be too. My comments are to protect the city of Fitchburg.
Right.
Keep that in mind. My comments are totally to protect the city. And, you know, even, I don't think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, I mean, I don't think it's spelled out the way it should be really for having this authority, Dane County Authority, come to Fitchburg. And it's not just by a willy-dilly, but the deal is do we put a, trial date, Pat, like 2 years, see how it goes. That's what I'm saying. See how it goes, and change it. And let's go to that. You could have different people sitting in these chairs. You could have different mayors. You could have, my thought is just to protect the city. That's where I'm at. And I just saw the end of the Housing Authority. That was a good meeting. I mean, they had some good conversation there. And I know it did come up. One of the people from the Housing Authority said, I'm okay with it, but do we put maybe, like 2 years, just a trial, see how it works? And instead of giving, the checkbook
Yeah.
wide open. Just a thought. I mean, I think some people in the city too, Pat, I think some people in the city would have a little more, can I use the word, welcome them better, have a better feeling for it. Dane County really isn't the bad animal in the house, but at times I don't trust them. I admit it.
With this resolution, at any time, this body, or not this body, but the council, can rescind, so vote to come up with another resolution that basically says Dane County cannot operate within the city. So really, it is in their best interest to do what's right for the city of Fitchburg if they want to operate here. The council will be evaluating them, I would think, on an annual basis, making sure that the properties they're running are run and managed well. They're not receiving, more than their share of our public safety calls, and that everything's done right. Like any other landlord in the city, it's something that we want to pay close attention to.
And I would think, with you saying that, their guidelines, our guidelines are their guidelines?
That's correct. Yes, we expect them to stay to the same standards as any other property manager in the city.
Yeah, so I have no problem with that. I mean, a 2-year trial period or whatever you want. I think that I'd like to give it the old college try, and see how it goes. I thought so in 2017 when this was brought up. I said, I met with Rob and I liked what he had to say. They just want to bring us options. If they do, we ultimately have the final say on anything they do. If there's something comes forward that we don't like, you just, like we do for things that we don't like, we vote it down. It's democracy.
Another way of looking at it. No, that's true. Janelle, do you have any comment
No,
on this one? Okay,
nope.
okay. Okay. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Next is Resolution R 4120. This is a spring tree planting plan for 2020. Motion.
Motion to approve?
Okay.
I can
Pat.
give a quick summary of this. This is based, every year we do a spring and fall tree planting, and this is for our terrace, the areas between the sidewalk and the road, as well as our parks. This is just the plan for this spring. As you can see in there, it's an item that's been budgeted, and we like to get those planted before the weather gets too warm, obviously.
That sounds fine to me.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Next one is approving agreement with the subdivision improvements, the 3101, correction, Fish Hatchery Road, LLC, CSM. Need a motion.
Motion to approve?
Pat or Misty?
Yeah, I can address this one also. Oh, now we can see Janelle here, so we got her on the screen. This is the subdivision improvement agreement for the dairy located on Fish Hatchery Road, the redevelopment of the dairy there. It's been reviewed by our Public Works staff and recommended by our city attorney and our Public Works director for approval by this body.
Okay. Let's see it. You have any questions? Anything?
I
I'm-
think we're good.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. The next one is resolution amending the subdivision improvement agreement related to the improvement associated with Payne and Dolan, CSM. I need a motion.
Motion to approve?
Misty or Pat?
I'll take this one again, unless Misty wants to add on anything additional. This is an amendment to the subdivision agreement for the Promega project on the the former Payne and Dolan property. The title's a little confusing because initially that was Payne and Dolan land that was sold to Promega, where you see their new building going up. This just changes some of the projects that will be constructed out there and the timing of it. Basically, it takes the projects off of Lacey Road, including some bike trail development and some water main, and focuses on the Commerce Park extension. That would extend Commerce from existing northern boundary up by Sub-Zero all the way to Lacey. It won't connect to Lacey yet. It'll connect to Lacey once we do the Lacey Road improvements next year.
When that connection hits Lacey Road, I've had a couple questions on this. You may know, when that connection hits Lacey Road and the improvements are done, is the majority of that paid by the developer?
The majority is either, well, no. The majority of that's going to be paid by TIF in the development, per the development agreement. And Misty can give you the exact numbers, but I know the project received about $4.5 million in TIF related to Commerce and Lacey Road and a lot of the infrastructure. And so I'll let Misty do the breakdown.
Yep, basically exactly what Pat said. And we'll talk about that a bit more with the next resolution. So in the development agreement that was approved with Promega, I think it was 1.4 something for infrastructure. So they will still be responsible for that piece. They will only get reimbursed for that piece if there's increment to support it. And then there's a portion of Lacey in particular that is not eligible for TID payment or is outside of Promega specific area. That will be paid for either by borrowing or by TID increment outside of Promega's piece.
Yeah, and that'll be the extension, the redevelopment of Lacey to the west all the way to Fitchburg Road. We're also going to the east a little bit past Seminole on Lacey for some reconstruction, basically to where it is currently an urban road there.
When that road comes out to hit Lacey, is that the same year, do you think, we're kind of guessing here, that the Lacey and Seminole Highway intersection gets upgraded, Am I thinking,
Commerce will be done this year, but it won't connect to Lacey till next year when Lacey's done. So
Bingo.
the Lacey Seminole intersection will be done next year in conjunction with the Lacey Road reconstruction.
there you
Can we
go.
consider traffic management within that budget?
That is part of the budget, traffic management, whether that be a signal or a roundabout. That'll be ultimately up to the council, but we'll get both cost estimates for this body.
Okay. Doesn't she look like she's in a bar or basement? What do you think?
be in the basement.
What do you think?
It's a basement, you know, isn't it?
There's at least 50 inappropriate things that we could be saying right now.
I'm not gonna get there. Okay.
I had Fred's fancy schmancy office.
I-
We got
this
that
doesn't
didn't
look
get
fancy to me.
Technology,
This does not look fancy here. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
We put Janelle in the basement. That's how this house rolls.
I'm gonna be quiet. Okay. Anything else? All in favor, say aye.
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 I
Opposed? Carried. That's important for people though, Pat, because I get a lot of that, you get a lot of those questions on when that intersection's gonna be up.
Yeah, you and me both, yeah.
You got it. The next one is Resolution R52-20, resolution authorizing the cost of sharing agreement with Promega Corp. Related to the funding of Lacey Road and Commerce Park Drive. I believe it's the same one, similar to
We need a motion.
Dan.
Motion to approve?
so moved.
Okay, I'll let Missy go into details on this because this is more of how the money's broken out.
Yeah, so the original development agreement anticipated that Promega would pay for the Commerce extension, and then they would pay for their portion of Lakeview Road. In consultation with the Public Works Director, it makes more sense to do a project as a whole so that there's more symmetry between all of the different Lacey Road pieces. So after discussing it with Promega, they've come to an agreement that Promega will put in the entire project for all of Lacey. The piece of it that is up to that $4.5 million that was in the development agreement, payment will be deferred until that increment is paid, and then we will reimburse them for that piece. And then the piece that is not really Promega's responsibility, but they're gonna do it as part of this overall project, we will reimburse them as we go out of the TID or out of that borrowing.
Okay. When does that start, Mr.? Did you say that starts this year? Does that start this year coming over?
Lacey
Or
or
no, not to
Commerce?
Lacey Road, yeah, coming over on Commerce?
Commerce will be constructed all this year. The connection will be made next year.
Between you and Misty, don't you think I'm just talking about the future, just maybe the end of the summer, we should put something out to the public in reference to that, to stop the questions. It's in District 4. I know I'm gonna get bombed with, where's that road going? When's it going? When are we gonna get Lacey Road upgrade? Just a thought for the future. I'm talking
Yeah.
about maybe something in,
We do have a construction location on our webpage, so we can make sure that that's clearly delineated for the public.
sounds good, that's all. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
I
Next one is Resolution R55-20, a resolution approving reimbursement of the lift station number 1, Terra Vesta, Maine, and Meadowview Interceptor design cost to Fitchburg Lands LLC. Dan, I need a motion.
Motion to approve?
Misty or Pat?
I can start on this, and if Misty wants to add, that's fine also. This is for the design work that was done for the lift station out at Terra Vesta. That was done a couple years ago. Basically, Fitchburg Lands, which is the developer out there, they put some money forward for that design. This is basically the reimbursement of this cost since the developer sort of put money down and assisted in the cost share for that. So Misty, do you want to go into other details as to how that was paid for?
Yeah, so they had to pay in a deposit for a piece of it. And then ultimately what this is doing is reimbursing them from that deposit for costs that they then paid directly. So there's still a piece of it that we're holding. There's a bigger chunk of it that the city paid for upfront, but we use that.
Yeah. So it's basically money that Phil has coming back to him.
All in favor, say aye.
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 I,
Opposed? Carried. Next one will be resolution, it's R 59-20, approving an amendment to, say, Kilo? Keel? Incorporated loan agreement with Madison Development Corporation Venture Debt Program.
Motion to approve.
I got a motion, Dan, Pat or Mr.
I'm gonna let Misty touch base on this one. It has to do with the CETA loan program.
Yeah, so that CETA loan program with the Madison Development Corporation, or MDC, we have a $60,000 loan that we provided to Keo to help them get started. They're having some cash flow issues and some other concerns. So as a compromise, in order to maintain our principal of $60,000, we're coming to you to ask if we can basically waive interest from this point forward. So we would still get that full $60,000 back, which was our initial investment, but it would be interest-free for the next couple years. I think final payment was 2022, wasn't it, Pat?
Yes, yeah.
how are we feeling about the likelihood that we'll get a complete recovery on that interest?
So we actually won't get recovery on interest. The bigger thing is to get recovery on principal.
I apologize, on principal, how are we feeling about getting that full investment back on the principal?
The nice thing is it is a shorter payment term, so hopefully things will be better. This waiving of the interest, along with a variety of other things that are happening with some of their other people that have loaned them money, will hopefully make this stay above.
Yeah, but to your point there too, Janelle, I mean, there's no guarantees out there on these type of loans, and this body, CETA, knew that these were risky investments when they made them at the time, but we do anticipate getting the money back. It's just, I don't want to sit here and make any guarantees.
Has this happened to CETA before?
I believe, Misty can clarify, but I believe there's been one default of our city loan in the past.
Yep, so one company of which we were invested both through MDC, but also invested directly through the city. So we kind of took 2 hits on that one. The nice thing is we've had a couple of loans that have been extremely successful, and we've gotten dividends back, and those dividends have actually offset the losses that we took on that other company.
Okay, if there's nothing else on this one,
No other questions?
all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, carried. The next one is Resolution R 60-20, amending the 2020 general fund budget, building appraisal. Dan,
Motion to approve.
Misty or Pat?
Go ahead, Misty.
Yep, so this is the town hall that we expect to get as part of the dissolution of the town of Madison. There's possibly going to be negotiations either with the city of Madison or some other developers that might be interested in that property. And we just want to know what that value is. So we did get some quotes. It's about $5,000 to get that appraisal done. So we're bringing that forward with your permission. And then it'll be paid for through the $12,500 of contingency that we budgeted in 2020. Will be used to pay for that $5,000 cost. It's a way for us to basically know what we have.
Yeah, and for the public that's out there and they're not aware of why we would be selling a building we're getting, this building that would be given to us as part of the annexation of the town is located almost about 3/4 of a mile into the city of Madison from the Fitchburg borders. So really, us as Fitchburg, we would have no real use for that facility other than to lease it out or something like that, which would be an administrative nightmare. I don't think Misty wants to be a landlord, nor do I. And this would get us some additional money up front to fund some of our ongoing expenditures for the annexation of the town moving forward. So we see this as a win in terms of getting some things lined up for 2022.
Is this the fire and PD in Town Hall?
Correct.
Is that what,
And a park, too.
down on Fish Hatchery Road?
Yep.
Okay, that, we're talking about the same one. Okay.
Do we have the ability to look at this from a couple of perspectives in case highest and best use is without the building?
Yes, we'll get both the value of the land and value of the building.
I had a question on that, Pan. In reference to, I don't think it hurts to get the appraisal, but if we took everything down there, would that land be good for the city to hang on for another project for something else in the future? You
Well,
know?
it would be, at that point in time, it would benefit the city of Madison's tax base, not ours, because it is in the city of Madison. We would just have ownership of the building, that would still be under the authority of the city of Madison, though, in terms of taxes.
Wow, that agreement jumped around like that over there.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened.
How the heck did that happen? Wow. I know, we weren't here. We weren't here. Okay. Wow, that ever jump around. I would have never thought that one, did you?
No, no.
Wow. I'm glad I didn't agree with Mayor Ballman on that one. I didn't agree with that one. Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. The next one is resolution, it's our 62-20 temporary budget amendment and purchasing requirement and amending the 2020 general fund budget for the coronavirus, for the Corona-19. Motion to approve. Pat or Misty?
The rest of them are going to be Misty here.
Yep, I'll take this one. So as you know, the mayor declared an emergency with the COVID-19 situation that we're all in last week. So we expect council tonight during your meeting to ratify that agreement. As a part of that, technically under our ordinances, a lot of those we have more flexibility in. We wanted to bring this to you both at finance and council so you understood what our intentions are and what our plans are to get us through this emergency time. So in your packet was a 2-page memo to talk about the proposal that we're putting forward for you. The budget amendment piece of it, right now, essentially the mayor can approve budget amendments up to $5,000 between expenses. But if it's anything other than that, it would need council approval. What the proposal is that the mayor would have authority to make that budget amendment, and we would report back to the council after the fact, so that you knew that that was there. Intention there is so that we are flexible, so that if something comes up, that we can respond to it and take care of it. Along those same lines with budget stuff is we're asking for $250,000 to be used out of our reserves, that rainy day fund you referred to, Tom, in order to pay for some of this one-time stuff that we're having to deal with because of this emergency. So you think of elections, we've got extra LT staff to help handle the significant influx of mailed absentee vote requests. Also, the postage for all of those is much higher than we ever would have expected, the cost of envelopes, stuff like that. And then from an IT perspective, all of this happened really fast. We were not set up to be a remote workforce. So there's been some additional bandwidth added to our IT, some additional consulting services to figure out how to get our phones to transfer to personal cell phones or other cell phones during this time when people were encouraged to work from home rather than in the office. So there's some things that we've already identified as how we would use that funding. We would continue to keep a track of that, keep a list of it, and I would report back to the council monthly, letting you know kind of where we're at with that piece. The thing that this $250,000 does not cover would be any staffing pieces, which we'll talk about more in future meetings. This would just be for that kind of implementation cost, the one-time cost. So that's included in here. And then from a purchasing perspective, as you know right now, anything that's $25,000 and above comes to council before a contract is signed. This would give the mayor authority to sign purchases that are not public construction. More than that, with a report back to council after the fact. Public construction statute would still apply. There is an exception for emergencies that we're basically following that same exception. And if purchases are not an emergency, are not time sensitive, are not discretionary, or are discretionary, the mayor has indicated his intention is to continue to take those things through council. This would just be used relatively judiciously in the situations where it's needed. He also has indicated that he does not intend to approve any policy type item. So that hopefully will give you some comfort there as well. But ultimately it gives the mayor some more authority with report back to the council after the fact so that we can be more flexible.
So in the spirit of checks and balances, I'm assuming in these particular cases, it would go through the department, it would come through you, Misty, it would go to Pat, and then it would go to the mayor. So this is definitely, we've got several checks and balances, and even though we're doing a sidebar technically on council in the interest of expediency, it certainly isn't as though we don't have multiple other checkpoints along the way.
Exactly, well stated.
I see that's a direct referral tonight too, right?
Correct.
Come back? Okay, no problem. We'll save that. Any other question? No. I don't think right now. If there's no other question, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Any announcements?
Oh, no, we're on J.
We've got more.
I think we've got, do we have two more to go here?
Yep.
Correct. These were the two that were added yesterday.
Oh, it should be on your screen.
I don't see it. Wait a minute. Did I miss it? I could have. I didn't see it on the screen.
Whoops, what happened to your agenda here? Do you have a copy of the agenda?
Do you have an I and J? Thank you.
This is it here.
Thank you. Nope, I didn't have it on my screen. I and J.
J and K.
J and K.
And I will point out that council started in 2
These
minutes.
This
two
one
right here.
first, this one second.
Yep, gotcha. Oh, I admit I didn't have it on my screen, Misty. We got it. It's Resolution R-72-20, approving a paid emergency leave policy for city employees between March 16th and approximately April 1st. It's going to Finance, Dan. Motion to approve? Misty or Pat?
Yep, so first I want to explain the timing of this. So you'll see it starts March 16th through April 1st. 16th is when the emergency declaration was proclaimed by the mayor, and April 2nd is when that new federal required leave is expected to kick in. So this is what I would call the interim policy for leave. So ultimately it comes down to we don't want employees to have to choose between coming to work and infecting other people possibly, or using their time. So it provides a couple of 6 situations where employees would be able to continue to get paid without using their leave time, so that we could all stay healthy. So it'd be an employee that's been diagnosed, caring for an immediate family member who's been diagnosed, caring for a child who's home because the schools were closed. The caveat with this one though is that if the city provides opportunity to work from home, the employee would be expected to do so. And if they choose not to, then they would have to use their accrued time to pay for that. But if the city is not able to or does not have the capacity to provide them opportunity to work from home, then they would continue to get paid even for hours not worked. And then the same for if they're experiencing symptoms, if they're quarantined or isolated because of exposure. And then if the city is determined to reduce operations, and again, if you are not able to work from home, you would continue to get paid without having to use your time. So there is a budget impact to this one as well. The hard thing is I don't know how much it is. It's going to depend on which employees and how many employees actually participate in this leave program. It will also depend on how many of those shifts have to be back. When you think of in the fire station, for example, if an employee takes this leave, that shift still needs to be filled. So we'll have to pay overtime for somebody to do that. If somebody in the finance department, for example, used this leave, it likely will not need to be backfilled. We won't have to pay somebody overtime to do those tasks. We'll just push them off to when they're back. While I know that there's a cost, I didn't feel comfortable quantifying it. So this is another one where we will report back to council after the fact and do a budget amendment to clean it up. The intention being that it would be out of the fund balance reserves again.
If I'm an employee and I'm just sick, but it doesn't have anything to do with the coronavirus, that doesn't fall under this, does it? You with me? Just if the employee is sick, that falls under his sick
Sick leave, yeah.
leave, I would take, I
Yep.
would think. So is this only in reference to the coronavirus?
Or similar.
Or similar, but it also is, as Misty stated, it's impacted too by if daycares are closed, or if, those type of situations arise, that it falls under sort of this gap funding between the Federal Emergency Family Act and what we normally do.
Any questions?
No,
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I,
Opposed, carried. The last one for tonight is resolution, it's our 73-20, authorizing mayor to implement policies for all city utilities to comply with the current and future PFC. I need a motion.
Motion to approve?
Misty or
Misty will get that.
Yep. So our water utility is regulated by the Public Service Commission, the PSC. The PSC has recently issued emergency orders, some of which have directed us to do things. Those situations where they direct us to do things, we just do that. We don't need council approval because they are our regulatory authority. The ones that were issued over the weekend, they were providing options to the city utilities. So we have the authority to waive interest and penalties, for example, but it's not required, it's an option. And so again, in order for us to be more flexible, we'd like to give the mayor that discretion to decide which of those policies that are available to us we would implement, both with the order that was released over the weekend and then any future PSC orders. I know this morning the PSC had a meeting to talk about what their plans were for the emergency order. It may come down that they do end up just directing us to do this. But in the meantime, because we do believe it will significantly benefit our residents and our business owners, we would like to take advantage of those options as they're available.
Yeah, I would just comment, I think we have to, under the circumstances, obviously, you like to have oversight on anything. Whether you like the mayor or not, you want to try and have oversight, but we're in such extraordinary times, and obviously, you want to reduce the amount of people interacting with each other in person, and meetings require that often, and so this is a situation we're in, and so I understand where some might question this, but I think ultimately it's in the best interest of the city to move forward.
The one other thing I'd like to mention real quick is so the water utility is technically regulated by the PSC. Our sewer and stormwater utilities are not, but we are also getting council confirmation that we should continue our practice of making all three of those the same. We follow the same rules for all three of those utilities, even though technically only the one is required to follow regulatory requirements.
Okay.
There's no other questions? All in
No, I
favor,
think
say
it's
aye.
We're consistent, we're in extraordinary times, as we've said. You know, I think we just need to do the right thing here and not have it be confusing, for our citizens, and it makes sense.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, carried. Thank you. I believe we're, any other announcements or anything? Nothing? I believe we're done until April 14th.
April 14th, tentatively again, depending on what happens with our governor and in the county health department in regards to this facility. But again, we're operating business as usual until told otherwise.
Understand? And we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.